This is A Geek Leader. Hey guys, this is John Rauda, and welcome to episode 51 of A Geek Leader. And today we have Dan Argandona, and he is the managing director of Fortalice, which is a cybersecurity firm located in Washington D.C. Today we talk about Dan's journey through technology into cybersecurity and how he became the managing director of a cybersecurity firm in the D.C. area. We also talk about some of his favorite one of his favorite quotes, which is by Colin Powell, which I think is a great quote about ego. We talk about how all that affects leadership and management, and how building relationships is extremely important, and being part of a team is more important than actually being the boss of that team. And I think it's a really good chat, very good talk, and I hope you guys enjoy listening to Dan. All right, and we're live. I've got Daniel Argandona with me, and Dan, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about yourself and about where you've come from, kind of your history and leadership and management, and where you're at now.
Sure, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks very much for having me. So I can just give kind of a quick overview. I'm currently the managing director of the commercial practice at Fortalice Solutions. We are a cybersecurity professional services firm based out of Washington, D.C. and Charlotte, North Carolina. And I kind of can give a quick overview of how I got here. I graduated with my MBA in '97. I spent 15 years in management consulting with Booz Allen Hamilton, Deloitte, and PricewaterhouseCoopers, doing a tour through Europe, in Spain and Portugal, and then working in Brazil, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Buenos Aires, Argentina, Lima, Peru, and then came back up to D.C. to do a fair amount of federal work here in Washington, and made the rounds between the State Department, DHS, and law enforcement agencies, different agencies that we call up the river, if you will, up Potomac from D.C.
Were you in security in any of those realms before?
I was. I can't talk too much about those because I'm classified.
Gotcha.
But I was. And then after PwC, in 2010, I went to be the director of strategic initiatives for Fannie Mae in the finance department. And that was about 2 years after the issue and conservatorship of Fannie Mae. And I went there for the challenge to see how a company that has, $3.3 trillion on its books try to, reinvent itself and eventually progress out of conservatorship. And that was a lot of fun. I was there for 5 years. And then after that, I was the director of strategic planning for Gannett. Gannett owns USA Today and about 130 odd newspapers in the United States and the United Kingdom. And that was really cool. That was an interesting we were trying to, their biggest challenge was trying to monetize a print market and a print industry where people are kind of self-actualizing in social media and getting their news without having to pay for it.
So what was the atmosphere like there when there's an obvious shift going away from print to social media and other methods to get your news? What was the atmosphere like being in a print industry?
It was really unique, and I think pretty much every single company that is in print is having the same issues. That's why you're seeing paywalls and different news outlets are offering you like 3 free articles a month, and then you've got to pay. The challenge really for Gannett was really interesting because right about the time that I joined, they spun off all of their broadcasting arm, and it was called Tegna, and they were just focusing on print, and they did that specifically so they can try to trim down what they needed to do to maintain their readership, to kind of up their game in terms of what they were reporting on, but also support the local newspapers. And very interesting financial environment to be in. I think there are a lot of people that were excited to be there, but there was a fair amount of anxiety. I won't lie.
Yeah, it seems like it would be a stressful situation.
It was, but I think they're really doing a good job in turning the corner, especially around consumer branding and how they are taking that their broader umbrella company of Gannett and kind of getting that out to the different individual newspapers. But it's certainly a problem that has not gone away. It's only increased.
Okay.
Yeah. So then after Gannett, I ended up joining a very small boutique consulting firm with the explicit purpose of standing up a digital innovation division of a large global restaurateur that owns about 75% of the footprint in airports and motorways around the United States in terms of retail food. And that was really enjoyable. I really, had a good run there. But unfortunately, the company that I was working for was acquired. And I had my sights set in different areas, and then I ended up coming to Fortalice, which is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. So what exactly does Fortalice do?
So Fortalice is really we're a very boutique. We're a very boutique cybersecurity firm, and as you probably are aware, started by Teresa Payton, who was the first female CIO of the White House, and her thinking, her grounding, is really in the conviction that everyone should be given a very bespoke and what she very adeptly calls a white glove service experience, and something that she emulated when she was doing the same thing for the highest office in the land. And Fortalice very much adheres to that, and I personally think that that's an incredible niche that's being underserved in the market today. There are a lot of cybersecurity firms that talk a lot about protecting their customers, but no one does it like Fortalice does. Nobody has the experience to do it. And we offer, we're not a consulting firm, and Teresa will definitely say that, but we are very much a professional services firm, and we provide bespoke professional services in a white glove manner to our clients, and that's pretty exciting, and it's definitely catching on. It's a trend that I think we're going to see a lot more of, but it's very, very hard for the traditional cybersecurity firms to deliver on it.
No, I think that white glove service is missing not just in cybersecurity, but in a lot of things technical. And I know, like, when I took the role that I'm at now as director of IT, that was one of the things that I wanted to make sure that our help desk team and our service team, did. Whenever they contacted or worked with anybody, they offered that level of service to leave the customer with an exceptional level of everything, just so the customer leaves saying, wow, that was really good. And one of the stories that I always tell my team is, I have a Ford, I have F-150. I love my truck. And I like that experience. But my wife, she has a little bit nicer car. She has a Lexus. And whenever we go to, whenever I take my truck to get the oil changed or to go to the Ford place, it's a different experience. I drop it off, they grab the keys, they ask me what's wrong with it. They say some things like 10W40 that I don't quite understand because I'm not very technical. And then I go sit in a waiting room until they're done. They go through this whole list of things that I don't quite understand either. And I get in the car and it's got this paper, mat in the floor, and I'm lucky if there's no handprints on it. And I drive off and I'm happy because that's the experience that I'm used to. But then when I take my wife's car to get the oil change there's no paper mat in the floor when I get the car back. It's actually vacuumed. They vacuum it. They wipe down the dashboard. They wash the car, and they don't go through this long thing. They don't ask me what kind of oil I want. They know what kind of oil to put in it. They don't even bother to ask me that. And then when I walk in there, they give me cappuccinos. It's a really nice experience, and it's a totally different experience for the exact same service.
Yes, I think it's a very interesting analogy that you provided there. I mean, I think from a cybersecurity perspective, and Teresa is very, very focused and scope locked on on providing just exceptional service to our clients. And in a lot of cases, situations where you're providing professional services in cybersecurity is a very anxiety-provoking experience. Fortalice has 5 different service offerings within the commercial practice that I'm responsible for. We have offensive cyber ops, or what you'd consider to be red teaming. We have security engineering, which is what you consider to be blue teaming. We have our risk and policy. We have incident response, and we have open source intelligence. And without going into the deeply into the specifics yet on some of the services that we provide, you can imagine just by some of those names that some of the experiences that the clients come to us are very anxiety provoking. They're very real problems. They've been attacked, or their data has been compromised, or it's just something that they're coming to us for a solution. And they can go to a lot of different people for a solution, but we're able to provide a lot more than that. We actually are very high touch with our clients. We're letting them know that it's going to be okay. We're putting a strong hand on the rudder, and we are guiding them through what could be a very anxiety-filled experience. And we've found, without a doubt, that type of experience, much like the analogy that you just described, makes people come back again and again and again. We hope clients aren't coming back to us with incidents, but if they are asking for our professional services around remediation or any other cybersecurity offering, we're always there.
Yeah, that sounds good. So you mentioned red teaming and blue teaming. I guess the red teaming would be part like pen test and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We red teaming, and I think it's in some ways it's kind of interesting. One of my colleagues calls it professional aggression. But from our offensive cyber operations, there's a couple different ways that you can start off from that. But typically, what we find is, we to use another analogy, we come in from the sidewalk, right? Like we're not, we have several engagement where there is an assumed breach and we have a little bit of help. But we prefer to have a baseline where we're just coming in from the sidewalk. We don't know anything. Mm-hmm. There's only a couple stakeholders in the company that know we're coming. Obviously, we sign very specific rules of engagement. And then we emulate an advanced adversary and find the path of least resistance and move laterally until we gain our objectives.
Nice. Okay. And what do you think is important for a technical leader to understand about cybersecurity and all that's going on? Because, if I went to college and right now, I teach part-time, as we were talking before the show started, at Winthrop University. We only touch a little bit on cybersecurity unless that's your major. If you're just a developer or a front-end developer, back-end developer, we're not talking a whole lot about cybersecurity from a threat, outside threats. We do talk about hardening systems, but you don't get a whole lot into that track. And if you come out and you work in a place, what do you need to know about cybersecurity? How do you need to prepare yourself if you want to be a leader in the tech industry?
I mean, it's probably one of the most rapidly evolving areas of concern that there is in the tech industry. If you want to be a leader, if you want to, if you're on the security engineering side and you're hardening things, you really want to be able to understand where the attack's coming from and why. You want to anticipate them. You don't want to be on your back foot. Mm-hmm. And from my perspective in answering your question, I think, understanding what the latest threats are, understanding what the threat profiles are, but more importantly, don't just think about it from the perspective of, I think there's probably a ton of really smart students that you're teaching, and I see it all the time with people that we hire here. They're very, very focused on the technical execution, and that's fantastic. That's an absolute baseline. Mm-hmm. But you really need to understand, what is the point of the attack? What are the attackers trying to get to? What is their end game? Is it extortion? Is it getting at data? Is it Bitcoin? What are they trying to achieve, a political end? So, really thinking about it from that perspective, is something that I think if you really want to be a leader, it's not just about your technical acumen. That's in this industry, technical acumen is certainly table stakes. You really need to be able to anticipate the threat and think like the attackers.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And I think one of the areas that I know I've seen candidates that I'm hiring or interviewing fall short in, and even students, and even myself, is the idea of social engineering and how that plays a role when you're looking at that end game. Because, like you said, people are focused on that technical side, but a lot of times that data can be, stolen from other methods that might not be as technical.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Again, like I mentioned with, when I was talking a little bit about our red teaming, it's finding the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance can really end up in a very unsophisticated spear phishing, attack that, generates the right creds. And, next thing you know, you've moved through all of your objectives. And if you don't have a very well thought out security posture, that relatively simple spear phishing attack can really do a lot of harm.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And, being in charge of an IT group, we see that happen, quite a bit, where people are attempting to, to use phishing in order to gain access to an executive or someone on our level. But I'm sure, being in Washington D.C, we hear it in the news quite a bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, here, social engineering is, we look at it from the offensive perspective. Mm-hmm. Certainly when we're trying to come from the outside in, and we certainly, talk to our clients about hardening their defenses and doing their training and making sure that people understand what social engineering is, make sure that they have the appropriate protections. And sometimes that's a little bit of a challenge because people don't want to, aren't really concerned until something really bad happens. But, it's kind of a standing joke. It's not a breach until your lawyer tells you it is.
Yeah. So how is it that you, being a young leader, how do you motivate your team, and not just your team, but how do you lead up also and motivate the executives that, hey, this is something we need to spend money and time and energy on. It's not something that we should wait until it happens and then put it in the budget.
I think that's a two-part question. I'll start with the team. I'm a very hands-on leader. I think, I've seen all types of leadership in my career. And I very much focus on understanding the motivations of each specific person that I work with. And when I say I work with, I don't say that works for me. I work with them because I have a specific role and purpose in this company, and everyone else that I work with has a specific role and purpose. And that's really the way that Fortalice looks at how we motivate our staff, and how the people that work with us are excited to come here day in and day out, and they really, really are. I very much take a multifaceted approach to talking with my colleagues. I want to understand what their technical aspirations are. I want to help them articulate what their technical aspirations are. Sometimes they're not quite sure. And then I actively seek to provide them opportunities as much as possible, whether it's within the specific lane of expertise or it's someplace where they really want to grow. If we have a senior analyst that is extremely adept at threat hunting, then perhaps he can help some of our senior red team resources develop some really advanced malware. Wouldn't that be cool? Mm-hmm. So providing as many opportunities as possible, and then also I consider that to be a very a chief role of mine. But then the other role that I think about is I'm always trying to remove obstacles. I'm always trying to be a problem solver as much as possible for the people that I work with, to help them do their jobs. And that's really motivating. I hope for the people that I work with, because they realize that they're not they're certainly not in it alone. It's very complex. It's a very dynamic environment. And the velocity of issues that come through in cybersecurity is tremendous. Staying on top of it is really hard. And, the more that I can do to remove any obstacles for them to do, the best that they can, the better off they'll be.
Yeah, I think that's one of the better things you can do as a leader is to, and that's one thing I struggled with when I was kind of early on in being a leader, was to get out of people's way. I felt like in order to contribute,
Right.
I had to be, in the code or in the mix of things, and not stepping back and just saying, let me just get things out of your way and let you move the ball forward. And I didn't realize that I was kind of capping the team's success to my abilities instead of allowing them to exceed my abilities.
Yeah, I think I had somebody that I worked with or worked for at Fannie Mae, a pretty senior executive, and one of the things that he and I always talked about is you always want to have a command overview of where things are heading, and I try to keep my perspective on 60 or 90 or hopefully 120 days out. And the leaders that I work with that are leading the rest of the team are maybe focused on 15 days, or 30 days, or 45 days out. And, from my perspective, it's really incumbent upon me to understand as much of the details as possible and be able to dive down into those details, but then come back up and understand when it's time to, just provide the right parameters and let people manage through a solution. And in many cases, I am most certainly not the most technically adept person in this company by a long shot. We've got some fantastic minds here, and being able to work through a problem with them in a problem set, and everyone kind of knows what they're contributing, really makes it a team atmosphere, and that's great. Nobody wants to be micromanaged. That's a really lousy feeling to have.
Yeah, I know. If you ask anybody, hey, describe your favorite boss, no one ever says, "Oh, it's the guy that micromanaged me."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So, being, how do you feel as a leader, not being the most technical person that you have to manage and support, and how does trust kind of evolve in that sense? How do you learn to trust them, and how do you earn their trust as well? Because I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest, whenever I bring somebody on board, I always have an initial meeting with them, and some of the very first words out of my mouth is, I need to earn your trust, not the other way around. Mm-hmm. These people are coming to do work. They're hired for very specific things. And they made it through the process. So now's not the time for me to hang carrots out in front of them. It's really for them to earn their trust in me, because I need to be able to guide this practice, to the satisfaction of our CEO, and executive officers, and make decisions and trade-offs when they need to be made. And that's going to require the people that work with me to trust me. As far as, so I work very, very hard at that. As far as, earning the trust because I may or may not be the most technically adept person in the room, I don't have an ego when it comes to that. I was brought here very specifically because of my skill set in professional services, and I know what my role is, and the more that I can translate what my role is and what my value add is, and explain to people throughout the practice, hey, this is the direction we're going in, and this is the direction, and this is why we're going in this direction, and this is how it's going to benefit this company. And this is why it's going to be really cool for you to come along for the ride. Then you're not really talking about who knows more, who doesn't know more. It's really just, going along for that journey.
Yeah, that's good. I think ego, you hit the nail on the head with that word ego. I talked a couple weeks ago with General John Michel from the U.S. Air Force, and ego is one of the big topics that he hit on, and he recommended a book by Ryan Holiday, Ego is the Enemy. Mm-hmm. Where he kind of got into how, as good leaders, we need to put our ego on the shelf. And I think that was the key thing that you mentioned there.
Yeah, it was written quite a while back, but Colin Powell, General Colin Powell, wrote a book, I want to say about 20 years ago, called My American Journey, I believe. And I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but it's something that's always stuck with me. In his book, he describes that he has like 12 different mantras that he's always put under the glass in his desk or somewhere where you can see them on a day-to-day basis. And one that always stuck with me was, again, I might butcher it, but, don't let your ego be so close to your position such that when your position falls, your ego goes with it. And that's really important because, I hear a lot about, more, mid-level managers or people that are really up and coming. They're always like, I want to be the smartest guy in the room. I want to be the smartest, I want to be the smartest gal in the room. And, that's, you're already coming at it from an adversarial perspective. Mm-hmm. And, you really need to come at it, especially in cybersecurity, where I said the velocity of issues and the severity and the real importance of what's happening to some of our clients, which in some cases is criminal. It's important to solve it, and everyone needs to put their egos aside and solve for the solution. And that's really what we advocate. And, that's what Therese is very, very focused on, creating that type of culture. And we have. Yeah,
no, that's a great quote. And I see that so much. It happens more, I guess, with really talented developers or engineers that are just getting the success of their skill, and they haven't quite learned how to harness that in the right way. And I know I was in that same boat where I felt like I was always right, and I was so proud of my work that I didn't realize, that I've got really talented people around me too, and they may not have the same skill set that I have in this one area, but they outshine me in many other ways.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I think, to use your analogy previously about, when you're taking your car to get fixed, never have too much of an ego about yourself because, the guy who's fixing your car knows more than you about that. So you should always remember that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, being a leader, what do you think some of your biggest challenges that you've had to face are as a leader? Like, what are some of the hardest things that you've had to do that you can talk about with your security?
I think finding the right mix of people is a real challenge. And I'm not saying challenge in a negative way, but if you're trying to articulate a direction that you want to head in, and you're trying to bridge strategy to execution, right? You need to be able to put the right team in the right place and give them the right foundation such that they can help you get there. And I think, from a strategic perspective, that's a big challenge, right? Being able to, say to somebody, go do A, B, C, and D and do it in that chronological order is extremely easy. Mm-hmm. Being able to articulate why you want to expand a practice area in orders of magnitude over the next 3 years, and for example, take a particular service offering and tailor it vertically for a specific industry. When you're given that challenge or that directive by your leadership, being able to articulate how you're going to get there and how you're going to, get your team to move in that direction with a clearly defined sense of purpose is a challenge. And, it's a challenge that I love. I love that challenge. I have it here daily, and it's fantastic. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, that sounds really cool. I think it's almost inherent on good leaders to enjoy that challenge, like you said. It's
yeah. You've gotta there's obviously all different types of leaders, and mm-hmm. I'm very proud that I was selected to be leading the commercial practice here at Fortalice. And I think, the more that you are comfortable with ambiguity, the more that you are comfortable with, generating different scenarios for how you're going to get from A to B. And the more that you're comfortable with generating consensus, where consensus may be difficult, the more you're going to enjoy being a leader. And, from my perspective, I love it when I can, walk into the office here and literally, have people, genuinely, you can see it in their faces. They're like, "Hey, how you doing? Here's a joke or whatever." And, and you just start your day that way. That's very satisfying for me. That's very fulfilling.
Yeah, I think that personal touch is important. When you're trying to build a team and that relationships, I think that's one thing a lot of people, at least I ran into when I made that shift from, as Todd Henry talks about in his book Herding Tigers, going from maker to manager, and making that shift. I kind of forgot about the team. I was so focused on the projects and the work at hand that I didn't worry about the people, and that was one of my downfalls. My first management job was not worrying about the people and realizing that, hey, you got to build the people and then focus on the projects.
Yeah. I mean, you can certainly, said another way, you can certainly build a beautiful Ferrari, but if you put the wrong person at the driver's seat, they're going to wrap themselves around a tree.
Yeah, that Ferrari won't last very long.
Exactly. And then nobody's going to remember the project, but everyone's going to remember the downfall. And similarly, I saw a lot of what I would call interesting managerial behavior in other positions, and something that is really interesting to me is that, there are a lot of people that can achieve objectives, right? But if you're leaving a bunch of carnage in your wake, you're leaving a bunch of bad feelings or just whatever type of dissatisfaction in the way it was executed, in the company, senior leadership is going to be very happy that you achieved your specific objective, but chances are you're not going to be selected to lead the next challenge and the next challenge and the next challenge, because the really good senior executives are going to see the carnage that was left, and they're not going to want to have to deal with it.
Yeah, or you won't have a team left to.
yeah, and that's that type of stuff that won't ever work.
Yeah. So, do you have any stories that you could share, anonymously, of course, of some bad leadership that you've seen in the past?
Yeah. So I will. So I'll share one about me. So man, it was maybe about 12 years ago, and I was kind of a senior level associate at a consulting firm here in Washington, and it was on the weekend, and I was barbecuing and just hanging out with friends or whatever, and I got one phone call from a partner, and I didn't take it, so I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing something right now. I'll listen to the voicemail and I'll come back to it. I got a phone call 5 minutes later, right? So now I'm annoyed, but I pick it up and yes, sir. And, he explained something that I needed to start thinking about and right that moment. I think it was Saturday afternoon. And then said, hey, I need you to be someplace XYZ Monday morning. I said, hey, look, I'm sorry. I'm happy to do that. But I really need, I have a doctor's appointment. I had something that was genuinely and I needed to do. And, no, I kid you not. He said, "Are you dying?" I said, "No."
Wow.
Well, then cancel it. And I was just floored. I couldn't believe that. So that just shows to me a complete lack of caring for the people that you spend a lot of time with. You spend so much time with people day in and day out. you're working 40, maybe sometimes 45, 50, maybe sometimes 55 hours or more a week. You're spending the majority of your life with these people. You really need to care for them. Whether you're buddies or, outside of work or not, it's just a general empathy for a human being. That was something that just, I'll never forget that one. That kind of floored me.
Yeah, that's just wow. That's a good one. I'm glad you shared that. But yeah, are you dying? Wow. Yeah, that's tough. I was thinking of one, and from my experiences too, and this is one that I saw. I wasn't directly involved in, but an employee went to their manager. They had an approval process where they put in for time off, and anybody, so that manager and then their director and their vice president could see who was put off for time off. And there was a project coming up, but one of the employees, asked off for a couple of days, in a couple weeks in advance, and his manager approved it. And then that director didn't go to the manager and ask, hey, why did you approve this? There's a big project or anything like that. He went to that employee. He went to his cube and just stood there and says, I saw that you're going to be off next Thursday and Friday. And the guy's like, yes, sir. He's like, is that good for your career? And he's like, what? He had no idea why the guy asked off. He had, just came directly to him like that. And the employee quit. He turned in his notice about 2 or 3 weeks after that and left.
Yeah, I think, if you look back in history at management consulting, right? Management consulting kind of came up in the 90s. And then it, rapidly became commoditized, right? It wasn't all that. The Pandora's box had been opened. The secret was out. So it wasn't just BCG or McKinsey or Bain anymore, right? And I think what was really kind of astounding to me is some of these firms had a culture where they would attrit the bottom 10% of every cohort that was hired in every 2 quarters. And it was a goal. I mean, I'm clearly not going to name the firm, but it was a goal. You had a cohort of people that were hired in Q1 and Q2, and that cohort of people were banded into their specific titles. This is what kind of led me away from management consulting because the kind of attitude like, okay, well, we're going to attrit the bottom 10% of the performers because that's going to create competition, which is going to really advance our standing and serve our clients or whatever else. And that's just so short-sighted. From my perspective, just very short-sighted way of managing. And, quite frankly, in that type of environment, the really good ones are going to leave because they can. And that's something that I think leaders always need to think about.
Yeah, I think even the top performers are going to be upset of how you treat the ones that aren't performing as well, and you'll lose them too. Because
everyone has different motivations for why they're there.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to be conscious of your time because I know you're a busy man, and I was wondering if you had anything you want to leave the team with, any advice that you have to new or growing leaders in the tech space.
I would really say, definitely focus on, looking at your up path. Make your decisions not just around, what's in front of you in the next year or two. Really think about, hey, how can I expand my knowledge? How can I expand my thinking? A lot of big firms, will offer you, fantastic training, but it may not be, exactly what you want to do. And you really just need to think for yourself versus, just kind of saying, yeah, I want to go to work for this big name just because. And I would also encourage people, because I've made this mistake, to really, self-examine where you are, and why you're there, in a specific position, and make sure that you are looking at your career path with time in mind. Time is the great equalizer, right? You can't get it back. So if you're staying in a position that you're not satisfied with for multiple years, then you really need to consider that. But then the final thing that I would always recommend, and this is what I personally as a leader try to advocate my people that work with me to do is, if you're not happy with a specific situation, go to somebody that you're comfortable with, or a leader, or your mentor, or whatever it happens to be, and explain it in a non-confrontational way, and come with a solution, come with a rationale. Don't just drop a problem on somebody's desk. That will go a long, long, long way. I can't fix a problem unless I know about it. And if there's a challenge that somebody comes to me with, but then they come with a couple different, potential solutions and a rationale, it's a much easier conversation to have. And I would really encourage people to just, think beyond the problem and come with solutions, and make sure you speak up, and speak up often.
Yeah, I think coming with the solution, it changes the perspective of the person you're coming to, from you being a complainer to you being a problem solver.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, because if you come with just problems, then you're just a complainer. But if you come with solutions, you're actually trying to solve a problem and make things better.
Yes, and the people that you're working with are going to be much happier, because remember, you may just be one of 50 problems that day.
Yeah, that's good. So how can people find out more about you or Fortalice and the things that you guys are doing?
We have a fantastic social media presence. Teresa is just an exceptional speaker. She's constantly on the road, speaking as one of the preeminent experts in this field. You can find her all over our press, all over our social media feeds. We're going to be relaunching our website very soon, so you can find out more there. Obviously, our website may be a little bit ambiguous, because we don't advertise our clients, or what the specifics of what we do. But I would really encourage people to reach out to us. If you have any questions, hop on the website, send an email, hop on the Twitter feed. Take a look at all the really interesting things. Teresa just wrote an op-ed in CNN. She's got multiple press hits all over the place. It's very easy to find us, and we encourage you to do so. I think you'll find our approach to cybersecurity one that is very refreshing, and it's getting a ton of traction. And you can definitely get a lot of insight into our approach by what Teresa's saying.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to link your website and the Twitter feed up to the show notes, so people can just go there and click through and get that information. Is there anything else you want to leave us with before you go?
No, other than thank you very much for the opportunity. It's been a fantastic conversation, and it's I always like to be able to speak to people that are trying to advance the next crop of leaders that come through, because you never know whether it's a podcast or somebody that you meet or whatever else, and hearing that one thing that's going to stick with you, that's going to change your trajectory. And if I can help people do that, that's very satisfying. So thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show and being with us.
Thank you.